Do your thing, man. I'll just answer. I'll talk to you.
Perfect. All right, good. Let's bless the conversation.
Yeah, let's do it.
Heavenly Father, Lord, we just come to you. Thank you for Ken. Thank you for Eric. Thank you for the work they do and the lives they're touching on a daily basis. Lord, thank you for bringing us to Tennessee safely and joining us very safe. God, I ask that you bless this conversation and that you, as Brad said earlier, that you remove all of us from this complex and you insert yourself so that people feel you magnify and glorify when they see this. Lord, we love you. Thank you for your Son and the sacrifice, and we can do this freely and excitedly. Lord, we love you. It's in his name, amen.
Well, Ken, thank you sincerely. It is like interviewing Michael Jordan of the question asking. So this is fun.
It is fun.
We just want to share your story.
Yeah.
We love that we're about connecting your faith and work. We call that being joyfully yoked to your purpose. We believe you embody that, and you've inspired us. So we just want to hear your story and share that with our readers, our followers. And so let's just start. So you grew up in West Virginia, poor or relatively poor.
Oh, sure. Small. Yeah. My dad was a pastor of a very small church, about 100 people. And lower middle class is probably, we were rich compared to the rest of the world. As I've traveled around the world now, I don't allow myself to ever classify myself as poor growing up. We certainly didn't have a lot, but I never knew it. And, my mom and dad provided for us sacrificially and so had a wonderful life growing up in a little teeny town called Point Pleasant, West Virginia, a town of 6,000 people. And the county was so small that the city of Point Pleasant was the county seat. All right, so that gives you an idea. But anyway, my dad was called to pastor, and he took the opportunity that came to him, and so here he goes. And I was born after they moved there, and would live there until I was 12. And then my dad went to plant a church in Virginia. But yes, grew up in West Virginia and gave my heart to Christ as a youngster. The Holy Spirit grabbed me on Thanksgiving Eve of 1979.
Wow.
And
how old were you then?
5 years old.
Okay.
But it was real, and I don't recommend that we try to rush kids into salvation and pressure them.
Sure.
But it was very, very real. I'll never forget it. And of course, my parents have been praying for me and very specific, and they held me off a while. But it was a service where people were just giving thanks for what God had done in their life. And at the end of the service, I'm just, broken and run up to my dad, grab him by the leg, and he takes me back to his office and led me to Christ. And so those were the early days, and grew up in the church. My dad's still pastoring. So love the church. And I got to say this, because pastors' kids, I got to say this. We get a bad rap because there's been some black sheep. And I don't say this to make myself look better. By God's grace and mercy, I haven't run away from the church, have not run away from God, and I love the church. So I want to put that out there.
Yeah, absolutely. We love PKs.
Good.
I think it just puts you up closer to God, especially with a great father like it sounds like you have.
Yeah, it's a tremendous opportunity.
It
really is
a beautiful thing.
It is.
I share a similar story in that I was saved, though, when I don't know. I was a kid. I don't have a salvation moment, but I've always known the Lord, and so it's neat to hear that you've known Him for basically your whole life.
That's exactly right.
That's beautiful.
It's a good thing, man.
Oh, it's gorgeous. So why do you believe what you are doing now matters? What is the why behind what you do here at Entree, and then just in general with your books and your other platforms?
Yeah, I love the question because it really speaks to the biggest question we all ask in our life, and that is, why am I here? What am I supposed to do with my life? What should I do with my life? That is the question that haunts us all. And simply put, why I'm doing what I'm doing is because very early on I understood a little piece of scripture that if you've been in church your whole life, you've heard 1 billion times, and I think we kind of gloss over it and we get hard to it. But the Bible says we are fearfully and wonderfully made. And if you believe there is a creator, God, then you must also accept that you were designed.
That's
so let me repeat that.
Yeah.
I don't care where you're at in your faith journey. If you believe there is a God and He created the universe, okay, then you must also accept that He designed you. And if He designed you, you must accept that He designed a plan for you to operate within. Okay? And so the reason that I'm doing what I'm doing is because I'm absolutely passionate about making sure that I fulfill the role that God has planned for me. And I'm a part of his enormous story. I'm a little teeny part, but nonetheless a significant part because it's a purposeful part, because he designed the part. So it's not about me, but if it is about him and his creation and his design and his plan, then I got to get where he's got me, because he's got a reason why he made me the way he made me, and he gave me some strengths, and he gave me a passion, and I've got to use that, or else I've wasted my life. It is for his glory. We are his workmanship, the Bible says. So for me, it's just that simple. And I just have always been haunted by that. As a young kid, as a pastor's kid, hearing young people, my dad would preach it all the time. I'd go to youth camps and everybody, don't miss the will of God for your life. And I was always freaking out. So I didn't want to miss it. And, it's a big mystery for people. And so, you've kind of followed what I've done. And so, I'm very, very passionate about other people figuring it out. Mm-hmm. But the answer to that question is, why am I doing what I'm doing? Because it's what I'm called to do.
I love that. That's Ephesians 2:10 incarnate, that we are his workmanship, created for good works.
That's right.
And you're doing that. And so we see you as a shining example. And so really your influence, we believe, is just to encourage you, is being shepherded for God's glory. And we see it, we felt it, we've been influenced by it. So that's fantastic. So great segue. Young folks, there is a class about to graduate, college, high school. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of young people that are on the conveyor belt of getting into the so-called real world. What advice would you have for them in finding their sweet spot and doing work that matters?
Well, the first thing is to find it. And it gets back to the realization, whether you're a person of faith or a follower of God or not, the fact of the matter is, you are you, and so be you. So I'd start with that. And so you can't be you until you know you. So we start with, you got to be you, and now you need to actually be intentional to figure out who you are. And that starts with, what are my strengths? Sure. I mean, to be really honest with yourself, and then don't rely on your honesty, because that's a hard thing for us humans to do. So go get some people who love you enough to be honest with you. Let me repeat that, because that's huge. Not go to people who just love you and will tell you anything that you want to hear. Go to people who love you enough to be honest with you and really begin the assessment process of, what do I do better than anything else that I do? So you may do some things good, but I want you assessing, what do you do that's on a 9 to 10 level, okay? If 10 being greatness and 1 being awful, then focus on the 9s and 10s. You may do some things that are 7s and 8s, but list all that stuff out, but then focus on the 9 and 10s. And those are the things that you do better than anything else you do. You're really, really good at it. Then you focus on your passions. These are the things that make you come alive. And so they're very, very different. You know what I mean? Like, you're really good at this, but this is what I love to do. So when I'm in this environment and I'm doing this and I'm experiencing this, my heart comes alive and I just open up, like a flower on a spring morning, and it's just very obvious to everyone that you are alive in that moment. You feel it. We know what that feels like. And a caveat real quick, some of you don't know what that feels like. Mm-hmm. And so that's why you got to begin to really discover and do some things. Because if you're graduating, you're young, this is the age of discovery for you. So go discover. So, if you know what that feeling is like, then go back and calibrate and go, what am I doing when I feel this way? If you've never felt this way, you better start discovering. And once you discover that, this is something very, very simple that a mentor gave me. It's called your sweet spot. And it is where God has designed you to be. And so how it works is you plot out the things you do better than anybody else. That's your strengths. And so write them out on a line. Put them out on a sheet of paper. And then write the things and dot them out, plot them out on the passion line. And where your passion and strengths intersect. That means your greatest strength and your greatest passion, where they intersect, that's your sweet spot. So in other words, what that means is that when you are doing the thing that you love to do, right, and you are performing it through your skill sets, well, then you're alive. So it is what I want to do with what I'm really good at doing. Mm-hmm. And when you marry that, then you begin to see your significance with great clarity. Because what happens is you're in your sweet spot. In other words, you have figured it out, right? And so this is what I want to do. That would be a purpose thing. And this is how I do it. Right? That's your skill. That's how you make that come alive. So it's a very simple formula, but it takes honesty and it takes diligence to see it through. Now, one thing that I want to share here, because it's not this moment, where like the actual occupation details itself out and the next 20 years are figured out. That is not true either. But what happens is you might find that you can do 5, 6, 7, 8 things in your sweet spot.
Yeah.
And so what happens is if we're looking at this spiritually, and we are in this conversation, is that you begin to see, okay, this is how God wired me. This is my great strength, and this is my great passion. So this is how God hardwired me. Now I can see that there are several things I can do here, and I'm going to step into that sweet spot. It's not enough to find it. Right? Churches are littered with people who actually know what their sweet spot is, but they're terrified to step in it. Because the reality of this whole sweet spot analogy and calling reality is that you have to then step in it and step out. Because God doesn't just give you this little yellow brick road, or I think it's the Fidelity Investments commercials that you see the green arrow and it leads them through the 60-second commercial. Well, that's not how it works. God's leading us, but there's no green line. And so he wants us to step into that and say, okay, I'm going to start taking steps forward to fulfill my calling. And it is in that act of stepping forward and then staying in that spot that God then begins to lead us. And see, the magic of this whole thing is that when we step out, God steps in, and then he gets the glory. So anybody that sees it, they go, Coleman had nothing to do with that. We know Coleman. There's no way he could have orchestrated that. It is God moving and working in his life. And so I hope I'm not oversimplifying, but I don't think I am, because I do think it's that simple. It's faith. So there's a whole lot of unknowns, yet there's so much that we do know that allows us to step into the unknown with terrific confidence.
That's beautiful. We just got to jump. So once we find that sweet spot, we've just got to go.
Yeah. See, it's not jumping into just, I think I'll try this.
Right.
That's stupid.
Sure.
But that's not what I'm suggesting. Faith is not just blindly jumping off of a cliff. Faith is, all right, I've done the research. This is a place where tourists jump off the cliff all the time. People have jumped off many, many times, and there's no rocks below, and I'm not going to die.
And I'm good at jumping.
And I know if I just jump off, I'm going to survive if I can swim. So there's faith in my ability to jump and then come up out of the water and swim to the shore. That's faith. It's not never, asking and doing the research, are there rocks below here? I just see a giant cliff and I'm going to jump off with no knowledge. That's the difference.
Yeah, it doesn't.
There's fear associated with both.
Right. Yeah, it doesn't.
I'm still terrified to jump off an 80-foot cliff, even though I know 5,000 people have done it in the last day and they're all fine and they jumped up. There's no rocks. All I got to do is jump in the water, swim, and get to the shore.
Yeah.
Is that how?
That's great.
There's a big difference there.
No, that's absolutely.
So do your homework is my point. So when you find your sweet spot and you know what it is, and you know that God's designed you this way, well, now I'm still going to be afraid. There's still all these unknowns, but I have confidence that I know when I jump in, I'm going to swim, and God's going to take care of me. It's
diligent courage. You're doing your homework.
That's exactly.
And then you're trusting God to push you forward.
Great way of saying it.
So you have your graduating folks. You have a lot of middle-aged folks. You have folks that are in their 50s, or in that window where they're figuring out, okay, like the Halftime chapter in your book with Bob Buford, who did a wonderful work on that, by the way. His book Halftime, just a plug for that, it's fantastic. What would you say to those folks? They find themselves looking back at their life and saying, what have I done? What have I accomplished? Does God still want to use me? What would you say to them?
Yeah. Well, the first thing is the answer to the question you're asking, is it too late? Can God still use me? Well, the first question is, it's not too late. And the answer to the second question is, yes, God can and still wants to use you. So what I think you're facing at this stage of your life is this huge battle with yourself. And there's this inevitable voice that's saying, you've blown it, you've wasted your life. And so I just want to be honest about this. I don't think this is a rah-rah answer. I think it is a cold dash of water to your face that you've been believing a lie, and you have to stop believing the lie first. Secondly, I would say you have to be very, very honest with yourself about what it is that your calling is. And you go back to the sweet spot exercise at 55, at 45, I don't care. And you do the exercise. And you go back down life's memory lane and you look at, what did I really want to do? Because I have found, I've talked to a lot of men and women at this stage, and almost always, Brad, it's after I've given maybe the sweet spot talk or, whatever the situation is, they come up and they're almost always in tears because they are realizing their heart is saying, I'm still alive. I still want to do this. There's something I could do, and I have not done it. And I'm now facing the reality that I haven't done it, and I want to do it, right? And so it's a very powerful emotion. So what you do, same thing. The difference is you're not 20 years old, so you've got some life responsibilities, you've got some realities, right? You may have some kids still at home, and you got to provide for them. So the speed of which you begin to move into your sweet spot might be a little bit slower, but nonetheless, it is still important that you pursue it. And so you may have to do some day job stuff before you move to dream job. That's just a reality of where you're at in the age and the space that you're in. And you've got to unwrap some things, right? But I believe that if you do it, that you can get to a point. Now, it may not be on the grand scale that maybe you dreamed of as a 20-year-old, but the fact of the matter is, I'll tell you this very brief story. I had a 55-year-old guy come up to me at a Chamber of Commerce meeting where I gave the sweet spot talk, and he was in tears. Very successful. Insurance agent. Had his own business. He's like, I hate insurance. I'm very successful. My last kid just left for college. I'm divorced. I always wanted to be a basketball coach, and my dad told me that that wasn't good enough.
Wow.
And I looked at him and I said, so your last kid's out of the house, so all your divorce payment, all that stuff, child payment, that's all going away. And walked through all that with him. He said, yeah. And in 5 minutes, I said, here's how you become a coach. I heard from him 6 months later with an email, and he said, Ken, I've started doing what you told me to do. And I said, start volunteering. Show up at a couple of local high schools, tell the coach your situation, and say, I don't need any money. I just love coaching. I want to get into coaching. I'm self-sufficient financially. Can I just volunteer and be your assistant coach, come to practices? Can I go scout some games? Can I just do something? And I told this guy, if you step into something like that, then one thing will lead to the next. And the guy was already doing it. And he was already volunteering. You ready for this? For a JV girls basketball team at a local high school. And he was on the bench in practice scouting games. Now I'm going to tell you something. That guy, if he stays the course, will be so fulfilled and so happy at some point when he finally steps into and he's a full-time coach. And he'll be thrilled making a lot less money.
Sure. Because he's doing work that matters.
Because it's not about the dollar sign. There's 2 S's that everybody chases in life. You ready? I wish I could draw it out on a board. There's the S, the dollar sign, right? And we stick 2 vertical lines through it, and everybody wants more of those S's. But what we really want when it's all said and done, no matter how many S's, dollar signs we have, we all want significance. And that guy, for the first time in his life, is feeling the weight, the positive weight of significance.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
I'm making a difference.
That's powerful.
I'm doing what I love. I'm doing what I'm called to do. Boy, that's powerful stuff.
Isn't it? And I love the story about you prompting him to volunteer and to give his time. I know you did that early on
That's
in
how
media.
I started in broadcasting.
Yeah.
I'll never forget. I wanted to make it in sports television, radio. I thought sports media was where God had me. And see, this is very important to my story. You know, we just have to step into the sweet spot. And I knew the sweet spot was communicating. So for my sweet spot, my greatest strength is communicating. Right? Whether I'm writing something or I'm talking, doing an interview or giving a speech. Hey, I don't do a lot of things very well, and that's honest. It's not false humility. But I'm a pretty decent communicator. And then the thing that fires my soul more than anything is to see maximization. Now, that's a weird word. You go, what? That's your passion?
Sure.
But that's why I love the movies I love. I love the underdog stories. That when a sports movie where someone, exceeds all expectations and wins the championship. That's why I love restoration shows.
Yeah.
Right? I love fixer-upper shows. I'm obsessed with them. I can't even nail a nail on a wall. But what's the thread through all of those is seeing something reach its full potential, maximization. I just get fired up about it. That's why I love sports so much. That's why I love biographies of famous people who came from nothing and they move into a place of great influence. So that's what fires my soul. Stories around that, seeing people come to that realization. So, here I am thinking, well, I'm supposed to be in television and radio because I love to talk and I enjoy it. And when the moment comes, I'm alive. Mm-hmm. So I knew this. So I go to the local sports talk, ESPN, #1 affiliate in Atlanta, and I just tell the station manager, hey, look, I'm making 6 figures. I got a great gig. I'm self-employed. I don't want any money. I just want to get in and start doing stuff. So will you take me as an intern and I'll just work on one of your shows? That's all I want. The guy couldn't believe it. He looked at me like I was an alien. And somewhere along the line in his discernment, he figures out that I'm not a nut job, that I just want to get in and I'm willing to come in and do whatever. And so I interned 3 days a week, 3 hours a day while doing my day job, running my business.
Wow.
And 2 little babies. And I did it Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And it led to some huge opportunities. We don't have time to get into all that. But that's what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm. I love that. You can start today with that side hustle, that you can start pursuing that while keeping your responsibilities. You had babies, you had a career, it wasn't right to jump off an unknown cliff.
No,
it was diligent courage because you said, I feel alive when I do this. I'm chasing this while not turning my back on my responsibilities.
Absolutely. And here's an important distinction. I didn't love interning for 3 hours a day on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I really didn't. At never one point did I go, I'm alive. Yeah. Right? Because if I'm being honest, what's happening in that moment is I'm going, I could do what those guys are doing. I should be. Right. Yeah. I mean, if I'm being honest, if you believe in yourself enough, right? Well, then you think I could be doing that. But at the same time, the other voice is going, but you got to be doing what you're doing right now. Keep screening calls.
That's good.
Hey, this is 680 The Fan. What's your question? Right? Keep doing that. And a couple months later, I'm on the air with these guys. They realize I'm not a dodo head, and they put me on the air. Then I'm doing live reports from the SEC basketball tournament here in Nashville, piping me back into Atlanta. You understand what I'm saying? I mean, it's like, I want to make the distinction that you can step in your sweet spot and really not enjoy it that much at first.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because I don't ever want to romanticize this. Like, there's so much hard work and sacrifice and chopping wood in the wilderness when nobody sees you. You're slinging an axe and no one sees it. There's no one to say, good job today, good hustle. I want to make that distinction, but nonetheless, I was stepping into my sweet spot. I was on the outer edge of it, but I was in my sweet spot.
And that's why you say you have to stay there, because it does become a grind, and the long, slow, uphill grind is where the work is done. That's where the rubber meets the road. That's real progress.
This is actually my favorite part of this discussion, right? Because I think everybody gets the analogy, my strengths and my passions. I think everybody goes, he's right, I get that. And by the way, that's not mine. A mentor in Houston, Texas, Don Sapal, gave that to me years ago, and he's given me permission to shout it from the mountaintops. But he gave it to me, and it was a light bulb for me. But here's the key thing. Here's what I struggled with. I got the sweet spot analogy instantly. But you know what I struggled with? The stay in there. I got discouraged. I really got down for a few years. And I don't regret anything. That's part of the pruning process. But this is the payoff, okay? The step in it and stay there point is huge. Because here's what I know about opportunity, okay? That you got to be in the right place or the right time will never happen. Do you know that colloquialism? You guys have heard me talk about this. I hate it. People are like, oh, he's in the right place at the right time, as if it was just this dumb luck, fortuitous moment. Well, that's garbage. What I know about people who have moved forward in life and who are successful is they did everything they had to do to get in the right place. And then somewhere along the line, in the right place, opportunity came along, and we call it the right time. But I can tell you this, young people, and by the way, middle-aged and old people, if you're not in the right place, you're not where you're supposed to be, the right time, the right opportunity will never come.
Yeah, that's so good.
So the walkaway truth there is, if you find yourself right now in your life going, I never get an opportunity. Opportunity never comes my way. How come I'm not getting a chance? You ready? You're not in the right place.
That's good.
Period.
That's good. And we've been given today James 5 basically says, don't be arrogant about making all these plans that are so perfect and elaborate that if one thing falls apart, your whole life unravels. But we've been given today, and we live in increments of now. So to us, it's always right now. In your book, One Question, which is a phenomenal book, everybody should pick that book up. Absolutely love it. Just some amazing interviews with people that you've heard of, people that you want to hear from. And Ken's insights to those interviews are equally as valuable to the insights shared in the interview. So please, everybody.
You're very kind.
Everybody pick it up. We love it. I've got a scribbled up, earmarked, just messed up copy that I took all the wisdom from.
By the way, that's why you write a book.
Yeah.
2 years after it's been out and all the dreams and things that you envision for it, when you see somebody who's dog-eared it and written in it, this is very rewarding. This is exciting.
Beautiful.
That's why you write a book.
Beautiful. Well, I want to start with what you started chapter 11 with. You were interviewing Andy Stanley.
Yes.
And you said leadership gurus talk much about the future. From casting vision to setting goals to capitalizing on opportunities for advancement, there's no shortage of material about realizing your dreams for tomorrow. We swim in a sea of books and podcasts and tweets about the future, but I often find myself treading water wondering, what about today? So my question to you is, going back to the one question thing and going to the fact that literally right now we're here, what is the one question we can ask ourselves about our vocation, whether you're a stay-at-home mom, you're a business owner, you're a professional athlete, whatever. What is the one question we can ask ourselves today to help shape our work so that we can do work that matters, so that we can find that sweet spot and push forward and do significant work?
It is simply, am I giving my all in my current situation? Am I working as diligently as I possibly can? Am I 100% present in the now? That's what that whole chapter is about, the now. Am I pouring into people that have been put in my life that I can influence now? Am I learning from the people that have been put in my life that can influence me now?
Wow.
Am I completely 100% trusting God that He has me where I am right now? And what am I supposed to do now? How is God wanting to use me here and now? That's the question.
That is so
I mean, I gave you several questions because I think it's a multiple thing. And here's why I wrote that chapter, and here's why I asked Andy that question, and he gives wonderful wisdom. But I got to share this. People who are wired like me, and there's a lot of you listening and watching that are, I mean, you're just always thinking about the next thing, and you're ambitious. I mean, you got this ambition, and ambition can be really, really ugly if it's not kept in check.
Right.
And the way to keep your ambition in check and to trust God and wait upon the Lord while still moving forward every day is that we have to focus on the now. My temptation is to be obsessed about the next and become so obsessed about the next that I completely overlook the now.
That's powerful.
And in doing so, I miss what God has for me. And tragically, sacrifice the next. So let me put that more succinctly. We tend to obsess about the next and miss what God has for us in the now and ultimately sacrifice the next. There is no next if I don't so focus on the now that God sees my stewardship and says, well done, now you're ready for more.
That's so good. And I'm gonna say what you say often, which is go tweet that. That's beautiful. That is a soundbite that means something. That's very significant to focus on the now and not necessarily the next. Our now informs and gets us to our next, but we've got our now.
I've got no control over the next.
No.
God does have a next for me, but only when I'm faithful with the now.
Yeah. Absolutely. That's great. Back to one question. So, and really your career in general, you have interviewed, worked with, you work alongside some great leaders here at Entre Leadership. You've also interviewed a bunch of great leaders, hosting the Catalyst Conference. Throughout your book, just you've rubbed shoulders with people that are.
I just don't belong in the room with them. Let's just be honest.
Well,
I mean, that's the fact.
Well, I guess God would say that you did. But I'm blessed. Right?
I'm blessed. Well, I'm very blessed to be in proximity to those folks. Yeah.
Yeah, and so my question: many of them are men and women of faith. Many of them know Jesus, love Jesus, and that informs their success. That is why they do what they do. Do you see a common thread running through these people, these mighty men and women of God, let's call them, who are out there changing the world? Is there a common thread that you see running through them that you can share with us?
Yeah, I wish it were different than the conversation we've had already, but, it's two common threads. The first is these men and women that we're talking about in the Christian space, because that's the specific question.
Right.
They know their call, and they have simplified their life. They are so utterly focused on their gifting and their calling, and they just wake up every day, despite their success, despite the tremendous influence they've had for the kingdom, and they say, there's more to do. I'm not done yet. And so I see a insatiable desire to live out their calling. They know what they're supposed to do, and they get up and do it. I mean, Dave Ramsey's the perfect example of that. This man does not need to work another day in 5 lifetimes. He's been that successful. But his motor, and I've worked closely with him now for 10 months. I've known him for a long time, over a decade. But watching the man, traveling with the man, in meetings with the man, he has got an unbelievable motor. And what drives that motor? His heart. He passionately loves to teach people how to make their finances work for their life so that they can fulfill their call. And it's that simple. And I could name after name after name that fit the classification of the people you asked about. So that's number one. They're calling, they're passionate about it, they know what they're supposed to do, and they're doing it, and they love it. The second thing is, this is true of these men and women in the Christian space as well as across the board in the secular world that I've had the chance to sit with as well. And the one thing they all share, so the first thread is calling, the second thread is they're curious. These men and women never stop learning. And, there's a lot out there scientifically on aging, people that age well, aside from like a cancer thing that comes in and wipes them out. But if they have good health the rest of their life, there is a body of work that shows that the more we learn, our brains stay active, the healthier our bodies are. And our longevity is a lot of times tied to our constant learning. So that's just a health effect. It's just kind of an interesting aside. But what these men and women share is they're constantly learning and growing in their craft. I'll never forget interviewing Coach K, who's just recently won his 5th national championship. He's now in the conversation with John Wooden. He'll never get there, John Wooden, with his championships, but 5 championships puts him at number 2 all time. So he's in the conversation.
Huge accomplishment.
And I interviewed him, this is over a decade ago now, but even then he had won 3 national championships. And he said, I'm constantly learning, calling young coaches that are doing really well. And I'm asking them, what's working for you in practice? What's working? How do you handle in the press? Whatever it is. And Pat Summitt, say another lion in the coaching world, same thing, always learning. So those are the 2 things. Number one, they know they're calling and they love it. And so it gives them tremendous energy and they can stay the course for so long. And the second thing is they're always learning. So that means they're always growing. Wow.
That's so good. Yeah, that is so good. Well, Ken, this has been amazing. I want to know, one, how can we connect with you? What are you excited about? What's next for you? Aside from everybody go pick up one question, that will bless you tremendously as it has us here at Joyfully Yoked, the Brads. But what's next for you? What are you excited about?
Well, it's a really good question, and it's fun. 10 years ago, I tried to answer that question. The answer for what's next is I don't know, other than right now I'm on the Dave Ramsey Show hosting the video channel every day, and we're sharing stories of people paying their debt off and experiencing hope and freedom for the first time in their life. We're having lots of fun. We laugh, we cry on that video channel. So come check us out, DaveRamseyShow.com. You can watch it in HD 24/7. The other thing is I get to host one of the top business leader podcasts in the country, and the conversations I'm having, whether it be with Jack Welch or, Jim Collins or whatever it is, and helping leaders and getting emails from small business leaders every day saying, thank you for what you do. It's helping me. Or whether I'm hosting a live event for Dave Ramsey as we go out and we literally change the trajectory of people's lives in a one day or a one evening event. That's what I'm doing right now. So that's what's next. And that is the season that I'm in, and I'm fully in it. Dave is going to be re-releasing the book, One Question, so it'll be available soon. Dave wrote a foreword to, he's already in the book. Which is a great chapter. So there's some fun stuff like that. There's some cool opportunities and things that are always swirling around. But what's next for me right now is growing as a husband, growing as a father, growing as a host, and being a part of this amazing organization that we do work that matters every day.
Yes, you do.
I am fulfilled on my bad days. I'm fulfilled on my sick days. I'm fulfilled on days where it's just an unbelievable experience. And so that's what's next.
Wow. Well, you have blessed us tremendously. This EntreLeadership team and this podcast has blessed us tremendously. We're just honored to be here with you today, so thank you.
Well, it means a lot. Just the fact that I've had some role in helping you guys, I mean, that's what it's about. It's not about how many people know your name. It's how many people you touch. And so that's really cool. And I'm grateful to be with you. And this has been fun. Welcome to the EntreLeadership Studio.